What's up, fellow board game soloists? Welcome to Top 5 Solo Games. I'm horror writer and board game addict J. Allen Riker, and these are my top 5 games that are better than their rep. Today, the games are presented in descending order according to their BGG user rating, though as you'll soon see, that's not the only factor being taken into account. First off, though, I'm going to show you a game that I think it can be better than its reputation, but that I don't think earns it on its own, and so doesn't make it into this list. And that is Warhammer Quest Cursed City. So the Warhammer Quest board games are pretty great. And they're one of the best values in games overall if you do like I do and buy them without the models in them. You might have heard of another Warhammer game. Well, they share the same models with the board games, and people will regularly buy the board games, sell the models out of them for more than the board game is worth, and then sell the board games for $30 to $40 with everything else new and shrink. This is a great deal. So what type of game is Warhammer Quest Cursed City? Well, some people call it a dungeon crawler. One of the modes does have something similar to dungeon exploration, so I can, on this particular game, get behind that. It's more of a dungeon skirmish game, but I'm splitting hairs and that's not what this video is about. Anyway, the point is that people were not happy with Warhammer Quest Cursed City. They didn't feel that it was properly balanced. They didn't feel it had enough content. And it seemed for a long time that Games Workshop had dropped the game and then just kind of stopped supporting it. People bought this big, expensive board game thinking that it was going to have a long life, and then it kind of got ignored. Games Workshop has been rectifying that in weird little jolts. It just got a mission added to it in their, I think their magazine's White Dwarf, and that was super unexpected. But that is not why I feel like the game is worthwhile. I feel like the game is worthwhile because these games have amazing communities built around them. And this one especially has had a ton of work done on it. One person in particular, Peter Cooper, did a huge amount of work on this game, fixing the balance issues and adding a ton of content. He brought over a lot of stuff from the Warhammer Quest Silver Tower board game, but you had a small stack of enemies in the box, but if you take his work, you end up with a massive stack of enemies that come out at appropriate times. There were, I think, 8 heroes in the box, and now you've got just so many options, just a thick stack of them. I printed these at home. Now, also, for all these, there are encounter cards, there are event cards, everything that was in the regular game, he kind of had to retool it to utilize all this extra content, since there are cards that tell you what to use at any given time. And I had those professionally printed through a service I believe is called Print and Play, just because it was so many. But that's the thing. You have to do a lot of work to get this game to the point where it redeems itself. So this is a sort of honorable mention or not included, but to let you know, if you want to do the work, Warhammer Quest Cursed City is a great value for a dungeon adventure game. Okay, so if Cursed City doesn't count, then you might be wondering which games are better than their reputation and deserve their spot on this list. Well, the first one is one that I think I'm going to get some pushback about. Please don't stop the video. Hear me out, and even if you don't agree with me, I think the rest of them have more solid arguments. This one's Marvel United. I can hear you saying one of the most popular board games out there is underrated. Well, no, that's not what I'm saying. I don't believe it's underrated. So let's take a look at its Board Game Geek page. Okay, so here we have the Marvel United Board Game Geek page. As you can see, a 7.6. I mean, that does not bode well for my argument that it's better than its reputation. But I'm going to try to convince you. So, in Marvel United, you take the role of iconic Marvel heroes cooperating to stop the master plan of a powerful villain controlled by the game. Each villain unveils their unique master plan with cards that trigger different effects and threats that pose challenges across the locations. You're familiar with this game. Everyone knows Marvel United. And 7.6 is a good rating. But here's the thing. I feel like every person who calls it a good game has to add a qualification. They have to say, it's great to play with my family. It's a great family weight game. My kids love it. And I'm going to just unabashedly say Marvel United is a good game, not just for kids, not just for family. It's a good game, full stop. And its reputation as only a family or kids game is undeserved. So one thing that probably accounts for this is the fact that in the base game box, you don't get that much variety and you don't get that much challenge. I played it quite a few times. I did not buy in on the first wave, and so I had to wait for the second wave after I bought the first wave core box, the season 1 core box pictured here. And I did play it quite a few times and I enjoyed it a lot. I am a big comic book fan and I think that helps for sure. But if you get the Kickstarter content, then you have one of the most modular games out there. Every villain is very different, and so you get some great variety. If I lost, I always have to immediately jump in and try to redeem myself. I feel like this game does require that modularity and that variety, and so if you just have the base game, yeah, I can understand why it is seen as just kind of a game to pull out and play with your kids, and it is good for that. And I don't think it's fair when you have to have, $100 of a game in order for it to be fun. But there are a lot of $100 games these days, so maybe it is. Another thing that happened, and you will see this throughout this list, is that the game changed as it went on. So the core gameplay was there from the beginning, and the villains are good from the beginning. I will say that the first season, the heroes aren't as differentiated as they could be. They started to add in starter hands and more cards that have the individual hero special abilities in the second season, and in the third season, they're taking it to a new level with equipment and really making a larger portion of the deck, each hero's individual deck, have individual abilities that represent them from the comic books. I don't know if you need this many heroes. If you are a comic book fan like me, then the knowledge of the characters does a lot of the work. You do need a lot of, I feel that the villains do justify their place in the game and having a ton of them. And I think that the heroes are starting to. They just didn't start that way, and it has never lost that reputation. And that's something you're going to see in a bunch of these games where a misstep, and I wouldn't exactly qualify this as a misstep, but this is more of it getting better through iteration. But a number of these games had missteps that people have been unable to forget. And there are so many games out there that you look at something, maybe you try it, it doesn't work out, and you never come back to it. And I think that's fair. I think that these companies need to make sure their games are fully baked before they put them out, because there are just too many games out there. If you bounce off a game and sell it, I don't blame you if you don't want to buy it again to try it again, especially as solo gamers where I don't have any friends who are buying games. I can't say, there's nobody who says to me, oh, the season 3 is really good, come over and try it out. I have to buy it for myself and then sell it if I don't like it. Okay, so anyway, that is my argument for why Marvel United, while it's probably rated about where it should be, its reputation isn't what it should be. Also, let me just point out that the game on my table in this episode is Dwarf Romantic. I have two 33-inch card tables that I play games on, and in the sunroom, Dwarf Romantic is the one set up for this week. All right, so the number 4 game that I feel is better than its reputation is Sanctum. Sanctum is by Czech Games Edition. So this is not a case of the game coming out half-baked and getting fixed and people not noticing it. This was a case of the game being missold, misadvertised. So let's go ahead and take a look. As we can see, Sanctum has a 7.1 rating on its Board Game Geek page. Sanctum is a competitive strategy game inspired by hack and slash RPG video games. Each player controls one of 4 unique characters as they journey into the heart of the fallen city of Sanctum, building up their skills and arsenals along the way to prepare for the final fight against the Demon Lord. So here's the thing. They give it the art of a classic dungeon game. In the description, they mention Diablo. That gives you feeling of crawling through dungeons and caves and slaying lots of monsters. And that happens, but in a sort of abstract Euro game way. Sanctum is a ton of fun. I love dice manipulation and luck mitigation, and this is basically dice manipulation, luck mitigation, the board game. It is to such a degree that what makes you feel good about rolling good dice are that they feel like freebies. Like by the end of the game, you're powerful. You can deal with absolutely anything. And so when you roll the dice and they come up how you want, it just saves you on resources. It feels like you're getting freebies. This game has a theme that's kind of just thinly slapped on top, just frosted over the top of it. And that's a problem. That's not a problem for me as a player of the game. That's a problem with attracting people who are into dungeon crawlers to get this game, and then they bounced off of it hard. I do belong to a number of dungeon crawler communities and adventure game communities, and I enjoy those games a lot, but that's not the only thing that I enjoy. But a lot of people thought that they were getting one thing, and they definitely got something else. Yes, Sanctum got eyes on it because of its theme and because it was saying that it was like Diablo. But the problem is that it got those eyes and it got those sales, and then it got bad reviews, and you don't want that. Dungeon crawlers are a very traditional genre, and it seems like they're getting more so. You see a bunch of games that are claiming to take it back to the old school basics. League of Dungeoneers, Dungeon Universalis, a bunch more. People want to feel like they did when they got into these games in the 90s. And not only is this game not a newfangled dungeon crawler, it's a Euro game. The monsters are abstract. You can see that you've got different monsters. It looks like, oh yeah, you've got a little variety of monsters. I guess there's not much to them because all they have is a dice that you need to match and how much damage they'll do to you if you don't. But here's what you don't see is the fact that there are 3 red monsters. There are 3 blue monsters, 1 of each level. There are 3 green monsters, 1 of each level of difficulty. that's not going to be satisfying to somebody who is trying to do thinking that they're going to be going on a dungeon delve that's going to be giving them an experience as if they're in a dungeon themselves going on an adventure. I will say that I don't know if there is a game that better mimics the Diablo action RPG feel than Sanctum. I've heard Massive Darkness 2 thrown around, but I gotta say, if you look at the core features of Diablo, Sanctum has them. Trash mobs that are really of no danger to you, that make you feel powerful, that drop lots of loot. If you see here on the back of every single enemy, there's a piece of loot. Focus on building up the characters through all of this collecting of loot and carefully crafting your character. All aimed at a big battle. So like you've got little enemies and they are building you up, and they might be giving you little nicks of damage that could in the big battle prove to be fatal. And it builds towards this huge battle. And I know that this is the catching point for a lot of people, but I think because it's got just bite attacks, claw attacks, and you just are building up, especially in the solo rules. I've never played a multiplayer. You're building up a stack of these as you go along, so the fight gets harder if you're playing suboptimally, this final fight. But it still feels abstract. It's not a boss battler. You're not moving around the board and trying to evade their big attacks. You're using all of the resources the dice mitigation and manipulation resources that you built up along the course of the game to see how long you can weather these attacks. And if you can take every attack and deal out damage, then you win. The thing is, it's a very abstract representation. It seems to me to be very accurate, and it's, to me, very satisfying, but it is abstract. So Sanctum, even though it's fantastic, only gets a 7.1 because they advertise themselves as the wrong game. So my number 3 game that's better than its reputation is more along the lines of Marvel United, where I feel like Marvel United gets criticized for its heroes not having a lot of variety, but they're getting more. Fallout from Fantasy Flight Games. So we see that Fallout has a 6.9 rating. Fallout is a post-nuclear adventure board game for 1 to 4 players, based on the hit video game series by Bethesda Softworks. Each Fallout scenario is inspired by a familiar story from the franchise. Survivors begin the game on the edge of an unexplored landscape, uncertain of what awaits them in this unfamiliar world, with just one objective to guide them from the very beginning. Each player must explore the hidden map, fight ferocious enemies, and build the skills of their survivor as they attempt to complete challenging quests and balance feuding factions within the game. So this game is a lot of fun. It is a fantastic adventure game. If you are a fan of Fallout, you will get lots of chuckles and lots of kind of fan service that is going to put a smile on your face. But even if you're not a fan of Fallout, it is just a very cool, quirky, post-apocalyptic adventure game. It's got great writing, which is something that I do not say very often about board games. It has good variety. It has a real feeling of exploration as you're flipping over tiles and hoping to find the locations that you need. But here's the thing. It never should have been a competitive game. It is very clear that from people's reaction that this is a game that people wanted to play cooperatively. When they released Fallout New California, this proved to be true because what everybody liked, Fallout New California is an expansion that basically just doubles the content of Fallout. It gives you I don't know if it doubles the size of the map, but it pretty much doubles the size of the cards. It gives you more weapons, which was a problem with the original just base box, is that there wasn't enough weapons and it could leave you defenseless for a long time. It and it gave you a bunch of new missions. Well, one of those missions is cooperative. And guess what mission everybody loved? That's right, the cooperative mission. So then what happened is that they released Atomic Bonds. So Fallout Atomic Bonds takes all of the original missions and makes them cooperative. And each mission has 2 factions, and you can play it from either direction. And this then gives you a sort of AI opponent to battle as you explore the landscape. Honestly, it's just a fun exploration game, and this kind of puts a timer on it that lends you a certain sense of urgency. It's a pretty loose sense of urgency, which I'm glad for because it's so much fun to explore this world. So the game came out in 2017, but the Atomic Bonds expansion didn't come out till 2020. So this is when the game became the game that everybody wanted in the first place. And you can see that this expansion isn't 8.2. Now, that didn't all translate over to the base game because a bunch of people tried it, so this game isn't good, and sold it. Or it's just sitting on the shelves and they're not thinking about it anymore. And they don't want to buy more for it, and I don't blame them. When I got into it, Atomic Bonds was already out. So I bought Fallout New California, and Atomic Bonds. And I'll show you the stack of adventure cards is insane. There's so much to go through. Each one has choices. They branch off. They lead to different places. And it feels organic. It does not feel like you're playing a choose your own adventure game, which is very important to me. I like some choose your own adventure games, but then I just want to play that game. I don't want to stop a board game to play choose your own adventure game and then go back to a board game. This world is so much fun to explore. And here's the strange thing to me. Fallout was kind of a reskin of Runebound. Well, if you look at Runebound, it's not exactly. I mean, it's its own game, but it's very similar. Runebound's Unbreakable Bonds, which is the expansion that turns Runebound from competitive into cooperative, came out in 2017. That's the same time that Fallout, came out. If they were developing these two things simultaneously, they clearly would have learned that maybe they didn't know what a success Unbreakable Bonds would be. I don't know. But it took years before Atomic Bonds came out. And by that point, a lot of people had given up on it. And so that is my number 3 game that's better than its rep, Fallout. My number 2 game that's better than its rep is one that you might not have even heard of. It wasn't until pretty recently that I heard about it, and I am pretty obsessive in researching soloable games. That game is Apocrypha, the adventure card game. Okay, as you can see, Apocrypha, the adventure card game, is rated a 6.7. There are so many games that are 7s. There's really... This is a little controversial, but if a game is under a 7, I have to hear something that's going to make me specifically like that game before I will check it out. So, Apocrypha, the adventure card game. The world is on the brink of an apocalypse, set in motion by monsters only your characters can see. Gameplay is story-based and features deck construction and character growth. Over time, characters will unlock repressed memory fragments that will add new powers. Each mission has a unique setup and goal, which often involves hunting down a true threat hiding among the cards at the nexuses that characters investigate. While there's a very good chance that you've never heard of Apocrypha, the adventure card game, there's another adventure card game that is likely that you have heard of, and that's Pathfinder adventure card game. A lot of people believe that Apocrypha is a sequel to Pathfinder, but the developer, the designer of Apocrypha adventure card game, Lone Shark Games, actually sold the use of their system to Paizo, who applied it to their Pathfinder property, and they just came out with it significantly earlier. it is, I have played Pathfinder Adventure Card Game as an app, and it's a lot of fun. But for me, it doesn't even touch Apocrypha. I have both the expansions, and with that, you have like 100 adventures. Going through these adventures, they're so thematic. The cards that you have that are your equipment that you use to try to solve these cases, to beat these monsters that are hiding in plain sight. It's a paranormal horror sort of world. It's dark, but it's also funny. Like, you have one of your heroes is a gambling grandma, and she's out of the base box. Like, maybe she's the most powerful. She's definitely the most powerful that I've played with so far. Each card has snippets of flavor text, and it weaves together. It's loose and funny, but it is just enough tied together that this emergent story can rise up. There's an actual story to the adventure that you're playing, but then the details fill themselves in as you play these different cards and use the different heroes and investigate the locations and find monsters and find items that will be helpful. That all sounds great. The problem with the game is that it's one of these games that was so inventive and so different that it basically created an entire new vocabulary in order to play it. It does not have enough touch points to other card games so that there is like anything that's familiar. It is so overwhelming reading the rules, especially because the original rulebook and even the revised rulebook are just not very good, that players who picked this up were too intimidated to get into it. If they tried to get into it, it just felt like running into a brick wall. And pretty soon, its reputation was just like, you're not going to be able to play this game. If I had come across this game first, if I had not played the Pathfinder app first, I would probably be one of these people who were just like, this is not worth the trouble. I say, buy this game and buy the Pathfinder Adventure Card app, which is cheap, especially for all the content that's in it, and play that, and you will get a good understanding as it walks you through. It's still confusing. It has a lengthy tutorial because it is a confusing system, but it works really well for what it's trying to do. The emergent storytelling is second to none. In Apocrypha, I don't feel like that's there in Pathfinder. The action is fast-paced and fun until you get in a bind. When you get in a bind, you suddenly stop and you start looking through all your cards. And you play with 3 heroes, so hopefully that's not a problem for you. I don't mind. And you start looking through all their resources because you're able to help each other, but only when you're in certain locations, in certain directions from each other. It's hard to explain, but it's a lot of fun, and it makes a lot of it gives you a lot of strategy in how you explore these different locations. Because if you're in the wrong spot and your buddy gets in trouble and you're great at whatever this task is, you can't help them. That's obviously bad. So you are trying to consider that. So as you're looking at all these keywords and it feels like hopeless, and then you find something, and then you find something else, and you are able to dig deep and put together enough dice that you pass this roll, because that's what you're doing. You're building a dice pool by using tools and abilities. You can still lose it, of course, which I think in this case makes it pretty exciting. There's a good amount of mitigation. So you feel like you have agency, and you really feel a sense of excitement when things get tough. The theme of this game is great. It's dark, but also funny. There's a paranormal world hidden in plain sight, and while that's happened in a lot of TV shows, it hasn't been explored nearly as much in board games. It has, like I said, the characters are cool and diverse. You've got a gambling. My team currently has the gambling grandma, a plague doctor, and a very angry cop. And they all have been blessed with this ability to see what's going on in the world, really. I will say that besides I think that this game gets its bad rep purely from how hard it is to understand. But another drawback is that it does take a long time to set up each game, each adventure. You have 100 adventures, and in each one, you're probably playing at 5 locations. Each one of them has a balance, a certain specific number of each sort of card. It takes a while. It takes a while to set up. Each of these is a location, and you go there, and then you encounter the different challenges, enemies, and you have the potential to find gifts, which are the equipment that you can use to pass the different tests. And so setting these up and then breaking them down and then setting up the next batch is a drag. I'm not going to lie, and that's typically a big knock against games for me. It's the reason why I wanted to try Astro Knights, because of I love Eon's End, and it is pronounced Eon, but I don't care what the publisher says. Astro Knights has a lot less setup. It's not as satisfying, so I don't know if I'm going to be buying any more of it. I have a huge amount of Eon's End. I might just put up with, I guess, with the long setup and teardown of each villain, nemesis. But the payoff for Apocrypha is high, and I would really like to see more people playing this, although I think the game is out of print. I've been seeing it on fire sale. If you're watching this video at the time that it's coming out, go to their website. They've been having the whole shebang on sale for $60. I'm pretty sure with free shipping. And it's a ton of content, hundreds of hours of content. And it's a great game. It's just trying so many new things and explaining it kind of poorly. I would say that if you get it, definitely check out the Liching Hours Apocrypha Adventure Card Game playlist on here on YouTube. I'm going to put the link down in the description. He is a master of digging the emergent story out of the flavor text of these cards and the way things fall. When the Plague Doctor pulls out a pink taser to defeat the Wendigo, like, he tells you exactly how that came to be. And it is a reminder to me to slow down and not just look at the numbers, because this game tells such a great, fun story if you take a little bit of time to let it. So that is my number 2 game that should be, that is better than its rep. So my number 1 game that is better than its rep is probably a surprise. All of these, I think, should be surprises, because otherwise these games would have better reputations. I'm sure that some of you have Fallout among solo communities, I think, has really started to come back from its bad reputation. But a lot of these fall off and you never hear about them again. This game, it's persevered because it was a huge early Kickstarter, which is a clue. It was not just a huge success, but one of the origins of the Kickstarter environment, with just absolutely bonkers, massive amounts of content and minis, and for a crazy, insane price, which is something that we aren't seeing as much anymore. The prices have definitely gone up, right? Am I right? So my number 1 game that is better than its reputation is Dark Souls the board game. I can hear your eyes rolling. That's how hard you are rolling your eyes. It is audible. And you should probably put in some eye drops because eyes aren't supposed to crunch like that. Okay. This is another situation where the game came out in a certain state, a state it shouldn't have been in. I do believe that, was it Steamforged Games? Was a pretty young company at the time. They had a reputation for, after this and a couple of other kind of subpar games, for putting out mediocre video game conversions to board game. And I think that they've gotten a pretty good rep now. But this is a game that so many people bought that it wasn't really even Steamforged Games that fix it. Now, I can hear you saying, but wait a minute. You said Warhammer Quest Cursed City didn't count because it was the community that fixed it. Well, seriously, the Dark Souls board game community fixed Dark Souls the board game. If you go to their Facebook group, you will find all of the work that they have done on this game, and it is a massive amount. People saw these really cool minis, and they wanted the chance to be able to put them on their table with a coherent Dark Souls game. When I got this board game, I did not play the Dark Souls video games. I was a Monster Hunter player, and I didn't think that I could do both because I'm not very coordinated, and I didn't think that I could retain. But recently, I decided to switch over to the Souls-likes, and I'm loving it, and I love seeing these characters and learning who they are. But I already liked the game. Now, once again, I hear you saying, you're telling me that I'm a hypocrite because I took Warhammer Quest Cursed City off the list and Dark Souls is on it. Well, that's because Steamforged Games didn't just sit back and let the community fix the game. They then took that fix and they re-released the game with new rule sets, taking a bunch of the stuff that worked so well from the community. Isn't that great of them? So this game is now good, but people are only just now hearing that, and they may not believe it. And once again, I don't blame them. So here we are at the Dark Souls the Board Game Geek page. We see that it's got a 6.5, the worst of these games that I am presenting today. The Dark Souls board game is a brutally hard exploration miniatures game for 1 to 4 players. Prepare to die. The game features a fast setup, long reveal mechanism that gets you into the game quickly and builds the location as you explore. The sense of danger is palpable as you discover new locations and the monsters that inhabit these dark places. The core combat mechanism and enemy behavior system forces deep strategic play and clever management of stamina to survive. Dark Souls includes numerous boss and mini-boss encounters. So, yeah, this game is definitely long reveal, because if you play it in the original way, where you go through and you fight monsters until you can face a mini boss, and then fight some more monsters until you are strong enough to face the main boss, and then fight some more until you can face the mega boss. This game can last 6 to 8 hours. I know here it says 120 minutes, but I have heard many people saying that they have played literal 8-hour games. And the game takes up we'll just say it takes up more than my 33-inch card tables. But the Dark Souls board game re-release that happened last year with the Painted World of Ariamis and was it the Tomb of Giants? I can't remember. I decided to buy this one. They took the game and they broke it down instead into little encounters So it makes it easy to step away. It also means that you never have more than 3 of those giant tiles on your table at the same time. These are very big tiles. And you'll see that this is, I believe, the origin of the Steamforged node system. It also showed up in, what is that, Horizon Zero Dawn. I didn't get it because I heard that cooperative, it wasn't good. The new Kickstarter that's coming out for it, they're doing the new Horizon game and something West, and in that one they heard people and they're making a good cooperative experience. But anyway, and now it's being used in the Monster Hunter World board games. Like I said, I was a Monster Hunter guy for years, and I like their node system, and I backed Monster Hunter World Iceborne, and I'm very much looking forward to that. So you see, in the old style of playing, here's 4, but you can, I've seen ones with 8 cards. They're filling the whole table. With the new system, you never have more. Here we see that there are 1. Here's one that has 2. You never have more than 3. And this is how they did it. They gave encounter cards that tell you which monsters to use and where to put them on the tile. Each one has some special rules. Each encounter has special rules. They're a lot of fun. They're as much fun. They're fun little skirmishes that are a satisfying way to power up to get to the boss battle. This game is not just a boss battler, because it does have satisfying little skirmishes. Okay, so why, Jeff? Why is this rated a 6.3 when I just said that they took from the community and improved the game? Well, they made another mistake that sullied the reputation of this game, in that for a year or plus, they said that when they did this re-release, that they were going to make it backwards compatible with the massive amount of material that all the enemies, the mini bosses, the bosses that people had gotten in their first edition Dark Souls. And they are technically, but these encounter cards did not include any of that material. So there are certain power scaling issues where you would need to either know the game really well to know which enemies you can swap in or out, or you just play against the core box that you bought, the Painted World of Ariamis, and you don't use those hundreds of minis that you already paid for. Well, that made people angry, understandably so. But they finally released, as you can see here, it was a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a month ago, maybe a little longer, they finally released the print and play cards for some of the older material. People suspect it's because they developed these because they're going to be selling that material again. But however it happened, they fixed their mistake. How much will this number climb? I think it will climb some. But once again, they messed up the initial drop. It's so important to get that initial impression right, and they messed it up twice. They keep working on it. It's admirable, although a lot of this work was done by the community, but still, they took it and they polished it a little bit and put their own twist on it and released it. And then they just messed it up. They messed up that initial impression. I don't know. So those are my top 5 solo games that are better than their reputation. I think that as part of my nature as a bargain hunter, I tend to look very closely at these things because I got a whole bunch of Dark Souls for not very much money, and now I can mix it in with this new game. I got Apocrypha, a whole lot of Apocrypha for not a lot of money, and now I get to enjoy these adventures because I played the Pathfinder adventure card game app and understand the system. My deal-seeking self is responsible for some of these. Some of these I just thought they looked good, and so I decided to try them out. But I am very interested in games that are better than their reputation, because it's just something new to look into. So do you have any games that you think are better than their reputation? I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Like, tell me the game and tell us all why, because it's fun to have new games to shop for. So that's it from me for today. Leave a comment, tickle the like, subscribe if you want to see more of these. I have a lot of them planned, although I have am still learning about this. Clearly, they will get better. I promise you. Get it on the ground floor. Get it while it's a bargain. Didn't I just talk about how first impressions are so important? Oh God, you're clicking away to never come back. Okay. Anyway, I hope you have a great day and keep playing solo.